think that my favorite parts are the risk and the trial. So much like self-awareness, and like a lot of self-talk is involved in creating too, because like every stage that you're going through, like you have to be the one that's like confident enough to be like, okay, like I've done the right thing, like I can do the next thing, and that self-talk is what gets you to the next thing. I mean, it's really easy to ditch a project too. Like it's the willingness to put out something that's like imperfect or doesn't match like the exact vision that you had at the start. I love the risk factor because I think that's where truly creative things start to happen, because you might have had an original plan and the end result might not be what it looks like, what you thought exactly it was going to look like. In getting there, you also have to like, I feel like psychologically sometimes I have to like talk myself down and be like, okay, it's going to be okay. And the thrill of that is like, that's my adrenaline.
Hey, this is Melarie and Sylvia, and you're listening to the Rough Concept Podcast. Everyone, this is Syl, my girl, via calligraphy. For those who know, but for those who don't know you, let them know who you are, what you do, why I love you so much, all the things.
Ooh. Okay, my name is Sylvia. I'm better known as Via Calligraphy. I've been a calligrapher for 7 years now, and I think that's how long we've known each other.
Exactly.
And I say I'm better known as that just because like I do have lots of creative things going on. I am a director of marketing during the day, so uniquely I am a 9-to-5er. I work at an agency, and then everything that I'm doing creatively is kind of a side hustle or an add-on. The way I always introduce myself as Via Calligraphy, though, is I initially, like right when I started my business, it wasn't even a business yet, it was when I did my jacket. So very abbreviated jacket story. Essentially, like my first project as like a beginner calligrapher was to write "Just Married" on the back of my favorite leather jacket for my small intimate wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And when I created that jacket, I don't know, after the wedding happened, I was like, there's not a lot I can do with it. I'm not going to keep it. So I decided to do that whole like release it to the world and see where it goes. And I put it up on a barter site in which you don't ask people for money for anything. You trade. So if I were like, I've got these great glasses, I don't like the pattern of them anymore, but I like yours, or like I'm looking for another one. It was like people like meeting at subway stations, meeting on street corners and just trading things.
That's
and
cool.
That as like a community aspect, I was like, that's how I want to sell this jacket. Like I wasn't looking to make money from it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of realized that everyone that wanted to borrow the jacket had a different wedding date. So I kept the jacket. Over this past 7 years, it's been to over 200 weddings in Toronto. 200 is wild. Like
It is.
It's a lot of people. The jacket, because I kept it like a pure project in that a lot of people will say like, why didn't you make a size, small, medium, large, extra large, and then start renting it for money? You could make lots of money. I was like, I'm not trying to start a fashion rental business here. I'm just trying to maintain my jacket, pass on the good vibes, and see where that goes.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of that is like my marketing brain. On the other side of it, it's the side of me that's like, I like community and connection and whatever comes out of that. So it's continued to live on. And because of the press that I got when I had that project going on, it was initially like a lot of local newspapers, radio stations and stuff. But then we got covered by Huffington Post, Vogue, Brides Magazine, like did a little viral video and everything. It became a global project where there are other artists that I've helped start up the same project in different areas of the world. So it's in London, New York, many different cities in Canada. So Ottawa, Edmonton, Montreal, Vancouver. It's in Hong Kong. It's in Australia, even Hawaii. Like, so there's just like something about the connection there that's kind of like allowed me to get my exposure, my footing, my claim to fame, I guess it was.
Yeah.
And allowed me to expand my business in a way that's been organic and had people find me either from the project or from other things. And then what I do now as a calligrapher is I work with brands, sometimes in retail, but more so in like PR and special events, doing customization. And jokingly, I'm a glorified name writer because essentially that's what I do at events. But I mean, more than that, like I think I exist as like an experiential artist, which is something you do too. And that is like you act as like a medium to humanize a brand to the
Mm-hmm.
customers and connect people. Like, again, like using you as a medium, it's like you are a representative of a brand to say, here, I'm providing you with an experience, like a little piece of art that you can take away, but the memorable part is you and the experience that you give.
Yeah.
It's just the brand that kind of facilitates that.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, who I am, is like a creative journey. I have found that like in my adult years, like once I was in a 9 to 5, I felt like I was really losing myself, because after I'd finished like school and I started working, I was like, something was missing and I couldn't understand what it was. Like, have I told you the story, Mel, that I turned to like working out? I thought I was missing like exercise.
No, you didn't tell me that.
It was like
That's
when I first started like my 9 to 5, I had stopped doing creative things like sewing, because I used to like, I know how to fashion design and pattern make and sew. I
Mhm,
stopped doing like everything because I was like, I've got it all. Like I've got a big girl job, right?
mhm,
And then like I started getting like really depressed, and I was like, I don't know what this is. So I was like, I think it's exercise, because that's what you're told, right? As like a
mhm.
first like thing is like, get off your ass and like do
Is
something.
this when you made your hairstyle sweater?
No, that was like my COVID, like losing my mind thing.
Okay,
But
okay,
this was like a long time ago. This was like 2013.
got you.
And so I started like with like yoga. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to run. And in 1 year, I ran a 5K, a 10K, and a 15K race.
What?
Yeah. But it was all like 1 year, like all in a burst, because I was like, I don't know. I was trying to like find something. And then eventually I was like, oh no, I'm missing like just making things.
That's why.
So I think like, if broadly your question is like who, what's your creative journey like what's creativity to you? It's just like, I have learned that I just always need to make something. I have
Yeah.
to make something at all times, or like have some kind of project or something that I'm looking to create or thinking about creating that is really like nothing to do with trying to make money and, make a living.
So I saw this post on Instagram. It says that the best form of self-care is creating. Like that's the best thing that you can do. Like especially as like an artist or whatever form, whatever medium you use. That's like following through with a creative idea is a form of self-care. And I was like, that is so damn true because I know when I don't follow through with ideas or if I like procrastinate, I begin to feel like crap. And then there was another post. This dude said the most unhappy people I know are people who don't follow through with their creative ideas. And he said, don't be one of those people. So I just feel like it just confirms, like with you saying it now, like, yeah, you did all these other things, but you just wanted to create something. Like that is just
And I don't know, it took me a long time to get there to understand it was like the making things that's like just my general happiness and life
yeah.
satisfaction is just to be able to like make. It doesn't have to be for a purpose, because like I said
Hmm.
before, it was like I was sewing something. You just said, you're knitting your sweater. Like I think that was my like COVID, like looking for a new hobby and making something. I
That
just
was so
learned to
cool.
knit with the
Yeah.
most like absurd project ever. Biggest project. It cost me like $400 or $500 in materials. I was just like, I'm doing this. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna
Bro,
watch
whenever you
every
posted the
tutorial.
video on TikTok, I was like, "Yes, I love this." And then you wore it. I was like, "That's way more fulfilling than making something to like share or sell. Like you made that for yourself." And
Yeah.
I really wanted to touch on that because just to see you like outside looking in, it was just so inspiring to like create for myself. I think being an artist or calligrapher or paint or anything, like we're doing what we enjoy, what we love, what we're passionate about, but then like making money and then still having to pay your bills. I was just talking to someone else about this. Still having to pay your bills, it kind of gets gray. And you got to
Mhm.
really define that line like, all right, this is for me and this is for everyone else, right? So
Oh yeah.
to
Yeah.
see you knit that damn sweater. And I was like, yeah, like I was over here like, yeah, like what is it? What's that cars TikTok that's been circulating? That was me because I think we all need that just sometimes to just create for ourselves. So yeah,
I
I'm glad
know.
you
I
shared.
think that was like, you and I have talked about this. Like I think it was like, it's probably even during COVID times. Like we've known each other for a while now, but
Mhm.
we were sending each other pottery TikToks and like
Yeah.
pottery reels all the time.
Do you still watch them? I watch them on YouTube now while I
I
work.
love them. Oh, that's a really good idea, like the real
Yeah,
time ones, yeah.
yeah.
Because we were like, we have to do this. I think it's like the act of like very slowly making something with your hands, like doing something for a craft and like
Mm,
really getting into the process and like learning the ins and outs of it.
mhm,
Like I on the very specific like brush calligraphy side of things, like I teach a beginner brush lettering class, right?
mhm.
And during it, like I'll have like my tools and I'm like, guys, like I like to use like brush pens.
Yeah.
Reason being, I like the simplicity of it. I do a lot of on-site and stuff like that. I just need
Mhm.
something that's like ready to go. But I always mention to everyone that like, if you're not interested in that particular tool, the other thing you can get into is pointed pens. And
Mhm.
the reason I like get into that is like the craft of it is I'm like, if you're the type of person that wants to learn something, that you want to take an ink that you buy from a bottle, but you have to dilute it a certain amount and fill it into another bottle or into a pen or dip it or see
Oh,
the
I remember
the
those days.
viscosity of it, or like certain kinds of paper, like if you just like use normal paper, it bleeds all over the place. If you
Blues
use
too, yeah.
too toothy of a watercolor paper, it's like splattering because it's like catching on the grain.
I
But
mean,
if you like that kind of part of the craft of like experimenting and testing, it's not a bad thing. Like, it's not a bad thing to get into. It's the finickiness that sometimes people enjoy, right?
yeah, and trying to, like, figure out how to find their rhythm with that. I remember
Yeah.
doing a pointed nib, and it was fun, and then I did the, what's the other one?
Did you Fountain pen? The broad edge nibs? Did you do those?
I did the broad edge nibs, and I loved them. I loved how, like, unfinished it looked.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that, but yeah, like, finding what works for you, I love that.
And
But
I think that's like something that I don't know whether to say it's like an Instagram thing
mhm,
or if it's a young artist thing or like what. But I think people are so quick to be like, what pen is that? What material are you using? What
mhm,
paper is that?
mhm.
What Procreate pen are you using for that effect?
Yep, I get
Right?
that sometimes too, yeah.
And I'm not gonna like again, I'm not saying this in a blamey kind of way, but like that to me is like you're trying to skip and get a shortcut to the way of like achieving the end result that you're seeing from someone.
Right,
When you're doing something like that, like often when people are like, "What pen is that?" I'm like, once you hit the pen, do you know what surface I'm using? Like you're not
right,
asking what paper it is.
yeah,
Like
and it
you're
kind of,
not
like, takes from their own process to figure out what works for them and how they can, like, develop their own skill with whatever, you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. I think that's like
big
such a big part of the process is like
yeah,
the trial and error and getting there yourself that like
mhm,
um skipping that is like yes, there's the factor of cost to have to buy a lot of materials and tools, but
mhm.
like skipping that is like you do yourself a disservice in that like you don't get the chance to experiment and see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and what you like and what you
Mhm.
enjoy. Very
Mhm.
true. Let's
Mhm.
get into the creative process. So, in terms of, I mean, we can choose anything because I feel like the creative process looks different between mediums and seasons and days, kind of. It's never the same for anybody. And even still, like for ourselves, it's not the same every time. But what does that look like for you from like your initial idea to your finished product?
I think like no matter what form I'm taking, like if it's like on the side of like fashion, whether I'm doing like calligraphy projects, if it's like knitting or paper craft or even like, just taking images and stuff. I think I always start with inspiration,
Mhm.
but I try to avoid the algorithmic trap of Pinterest where like if you look for inspiration, you can find the direct thing that you want.
Right.
Like surely you've had clients that do this to you. They just show you another artist's work directly. They're like, "Can you do this?" And you're like, thanks for the inspo, but like I absolutely hate being given another artist's work and being told
Mhm.
like just do exactly what they did because they've created it once and they'll get exactly what they want out of an artist by doing that because you're just asking for a copy in essence, right? So I think
Mhm.
like when I say I'm trying to avoid like the algorithmic trap of it, as soon as you start looking at something on any social media, it serves you more of the
And
same
they keep
thing.
feeding it to you. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's really hard for artists too to like see other people's work all the time.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I try to kind of treat my inspiration as less direct. Being like, having recently traveled, it's always inspiring for me to like see by like food what other people are doing, like local crafts and
Right.
stuff like that. And to me,
Yeah.
that's like the most inspiring thing. So experiencing things, and then that level of intake, I think, gives you a sense of having better taste too.
Mm,
Like, I think in everything in life, like, you don't have a taste in it until you can expose yourself to lots and lots and lots of the thing, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Like, I feel like I used to say, like, I don't know how to do interiors. Like, I don't know what I like. Like, how did you land on liking lime washed walls and the shelf that you have behind you? It's like you have to see like lots of stuff and intake it before you can like bring those things in your life. So I think I do a lot of intake to start with. And then from there, like my process of like acquiring is I recently talked to someone at a workshop about this. They were like, "Where did you get your like marble cut coasters?" And they were like, were these coasters just purchased like that?" And I'm like, "No, they're tiles from the hardware store. Like you have to look at your materials." And I was like, "Go to the source of where you would get your materials from, like the
Right.
hardware store, the tile store, or whatever, and
Mhm.
not be like, I need to go to like CB2 to get completed tiles."
Yeah.
It's like the same thing, right?
Yeah. Right.
So like sourcing and understanding like where materials and stuff comes from, like that's like a whole other thing. Like
Mhm.
thinking past marketing, because even buying yarn or materials, there's always that beginner kit they're going to package for you. Things that you get everything all at once. Here's all of it that you need to get started. But it's like you can buy those things individually. You can look to source other places if you can wait. If you
Yeah.
have the time. If you have the time to go off of like Amazon and Michael's and stuff, right?
Yeah, that's very true. I realized that too whenever it was something I was doing. I think it was in the season where I was like trying to capture my work.
Hmm.
And I think it was kind of around a time where a couple of people started to sell the backdrops and the
Hmm.
kits to take pictures of your work.
Yeah. And
And
it's
I was
smart
like,
marketing.
it's great, right? And I was like, I'm just gonna go to Home Depot real quick and go get one of those like
Exactly.
vinyl rolls and put it on a board
Yeah.
and call it a day.
Yeah.
It's just it really does take nothing really. I mean, it takes a little time. It's easier to add to cart and purchase, right? But I
Yeah.
think it's way more fulfilling for me, especially when I do things by myself. Um, on one end, it can kind of probably be a little bit of pride too. Like I did it by myself. I didn't pay.
You
I
know
didn't pay
what?
for this. I did it by myself, right? But
Honestly,
it's
like
way more
when
fulfilling.
yeah, like if you can kind of see past that like marketing of like they just packaged it like this to sell it this way to solve a problem for me, which is like all marketing is. It's that creating of an urgency and a need that you might not even thought you had. Like
Yeah,
look past all of that packaging and understand that like you can be resourceful yourself and find out where to get everything. Like I
exactly.
think I grew up pretty resourceful. Like the reason that, like initially it was my sister and I we got into like fashion design was like I don't know, we had immigrant parents. The only places we could shop were just like whatever stores were existing in the very late 90s, early 2000s. And we're like,
Mhm.
nothing is like really what we want because we were also internet kids at that time. And we're
Oh
like,
yeah, dial
there's so much like exciting stuff on the internet. And then locally, like, what can you really buy to wear? So we
right.
started to like learn to sew ourselves and make things ourselves and just go to like the fabric store and find out how to get like little zippers and grommets and things and just like work out how to use them.
Yeah, it
Well,
makes it way
trial
more.
and error,
Yeah.
so
Like
much more
that
fun.
TikTok, video you sent me, she was, like, crafting, like by the
Yeah.
way, that those wool chairs,
Yeah.
that blew my mind. That was
Right.
beautifully done, but you
I
can
loved
tell
like
people.
it was the Loewe one, right? Like you watched that one
Yes,
already?
Loewe, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like they have this like I don't know, they're like awarding the best crafters. And I was like, this
yeah,
is incredible that they support like small makers essentially.
yeah,
But makers to that extent is like so admirable, like the involvement in craft and like
mhm,
really devoting yourself to like a vision and making something. I like
yeah,
that.
at that capacity too. That
Hmm.
is really cool to watch. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you said something earlier. Damn, I was about to piggyback on it. Let's talk about how, like, we have these
Feels like we
very
when we voice message each other and
I
forget
know, like,
what we said.
this is what I like about, like, everyone on my list, like, I know them to some level where this is just me both catching up with y'all and
Good.
like having these conversations, and because it's so fluid and like genuine and chill, it's just, this is not the work part for me. This is the fun part. All the editing part, I just send that off in prepping, but I like that I have this community of women that I talk to
Yeah.
often, and I could just get on a podcast episode and chop it up like we just catching up pretty much, right?
Like nothing. This is easy.
How is it though too when you were talking about being like creating things and not doing it, with the pressure of showing anyone or selling it, as someone in the marketing field, because I'm pretty sure like
Hmm.
with your expertise, like you can like right off top know like how to package something and
Yeah.
present it. Like how do you work through, being an expert in marketing, right? In this field,
Yeah.
that essentially like sells package things or help people sell things, or position their brand. How do you navigate that as a creative?
Oh my God. I think that part of it is like self-work
Right.
because from the beginning of like, if you're a creative child,
Hmm.
people will compliment you in ways that they think is like telling you that you are creative and capable, but they'll always still like, because of capitalism, turn it into, you could sell that.
Yeah.
I would buy it from you, right? Like, and I think we have to avoid saying that to children.
I
Like,
know, yeah.
and it's like they'll even quickly be like, you should be an artist when you grow up. And it's like the first thing they say is like, not like you should be an artist, but like you can make money doing it.
Hmm.
Or the very contrasting, like once you get into actual like the real going to university or becoming like
Yeah.
choosing your career, they're like, artists don't make money sort of thing. So the way that art is seen as valuable is deeply ingrained in capitalism, as like it'll be worth something when you're dead.
Yeah.
It like, you can make tons of money, but you have to appeal to the very rich. And so when I say like it has to be self and inner work, it's entirely to do with mindset, because the whole world is constantly telling you that. Even right now, if I do something new, I knit a Harry Styles sweater for my own health and enjoyment. People are like, you should sell that. You could sell tons of them. Like you should make money off of it. And it's like
Right.
you have to have the, first of all, self-awareness to understand, like, do you want to put your energy in it?
Right.
Second is like understanding pricing models of like
Yeah.
creating. And I think that is like extremely, extremely hard. When my sister and I were initially like selling our fashion online,
Hmm.
it was back in the day before Etsy even existed. It was eBay. So we could kind of let the market choose. Like, starting price $9.99, see if
Yeah.
it
And they
goes up to
start
$100
bidding.
or
Yeah.
whatever.
That was ways.
Um, it was wild, but we got to actually using Etsy for selling, and then that's when you actually start to price yourself.
Hmm.
So you have to put a price tag on what you're selling, which is something in which you've spent the time to get the materials, learn the craft of put it together. Then on top of that, online selling is writing the description, taking the pictures yourself, posting them online, paying the fees
Hmm.
for everything.
Yeah.
And I think I literally have the book right now about like sewn product manufacturing and how much you should mark up everything.
Wow.
We would use that and start to do the calculations and be like, no one would pay that, and underprice ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
First of all, we're young. Second of all, we thought to ourselves, like, how does this compare to everything else on the market? And it was like the startings of fast fashion. Like we weren't at the time as close as we are now to like Shein, where like things are literally like $10.
No, I think it's wild sometimes how like cheap it is. I was like, what? That's $5? Are you
It's
kidding?
madness. Like, and if you want to, pay for clothes and pay fairly, it's like very unaffordable.
Yeah, it
So
is.
it's the mindset thing here is like understanding how much a creator, a maker should be paid for something, and understanding like where that gap is between when somebody says you should sell it, because they're already thinking like, you're a maker, you will underprice yourself, you will be cheaper than buying it at the store because you're not a professional at making it, when it should cost that much more.
Should cost more. Yeah. That's
So
very
much
true.
more.
And it's crazy
So
because when we see like the artwork that's created by like small businesses on social media,
yeah.
and then you'll see it in a store somewhere, and you're like, you know,
Yeah.
It's just,
Which we end up talking about this all the time. It's like
yeah,
the cycles of like copying and like capitalism and
yeah,
a race to the bottom of charging the least for things. Like that's such a problematic thing in creating because I mean, I don't know if your prints have been stolen yet, but it's
they haven't, not
like
that
knock
I know
on
of,
wood.
not
Like
that
do
I know
not
of.
wish it.
I
Don't
would
wish it on anyone.
anybody. Yeah, I'm like, I
It's
haven't encountered that
awful,
yet.
but like something like that is like I don't know. It's I don't even know what angle to go at it from, but like for anything that is created and then demand is created around it, there are people and businesses out there that will just see the content for what it is and take that. And
Yeah.
I find like peace and solace and like gratitude in lessons I've learned about art around like form versus content.
Mhm.
And like every work of art is like there's the form itself, which is like the medium you choose to create out of it, like what you are actually creating and like that end result. But the
Mhm.
content behind it is like all of your inspiration, your thought, the message that you're trying to put out there.
Yeah, your
And
experience.
people, they can't necessarily steal your like the content of it. They
Yeah,
can't steal the values of it. Like they
yeah,
are just simply stealing like the form in its like base level,
yeah,
right?
which wouldn't have the same impact from, so
I
it's
would
like,
hope.
on one end, it's like, yeah, on a money part, like, financially, it sucks because they will be taking that from you, but then you can't completely copy something, and it can't have the same impact as this initial, idea from this small business owner,
Hmm.
did. It just still sucks, like, that way,
Yeah.
though. But I knew he was gonna get into capitalism because I know you like.
We always do. But I think like I mean going back to the original question of like creating for yourself and that like avoidance of making every new like creative project into a new business.
Yeah,
It's really about that like self-control and understanding what you want to protect for yourself because I think
right.
like literally as soon as I started knitting there was the well what are you going to make next and what are you going to sell? Can I buy something off of you? And it's like no, like I just choose to keep that for myself because of course I can price it out and I can say
Mhm.
that this is for sale and everything, but you have to consider your loss of joy as soon as you make
Yeah,
something a
yeah,
business
yeah,
because everything around it means that you have to over explain it. You have to justify it to a lot of other people. You have to possibly like post about something way more than you have energy for. And I think
yeah,
that's like as creative, sometimes you have just like a surge in energy to create something. You're like, oh, I'm done with it.
yeah. Like, too, whenever we were talking about the pottery, like, I
Mhm.
wanna try it, I wanna do it, but I don't wanna sell it. At first, I was like, "Ooh, this will be fun. This will be a fun addition to, what I'm already doing."
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, "No, I don't wanna do that." Like, I just wanna enjoy it and, to be something that I share that I'm doing, but I'm definitely not gonna be in here, like, doing, air dry clay to sell it to anybody, because then I'm
No.
easily that, like, I can feel it in my soul now that I'm just gonna get stressed, and I don't want that for my life, so, but I'm so glad you touched on that too, so,
Imagine you make one thing and you're like so joyful in the one time you make it, and then you have to make it like 100 more times.
yeah, like,
Like,
yeah,
no,
no. So,
no.
it's self-awareness for sure, like, knowing yourself, like, I already know that's just gonna be like, "I'm not doing this for 10 people," not even 10 people,
Yeah.
because it's a lot of work, but yeah,
I think you have to like, almost like get used to being in contrary to the people who are just thinking the way that society thinks, which is
yeah,
like make everything into like a way to make money. Of course, we're like in a recession now. I came out of school in a recession, it's like
yeah, same,
when when these things happen, you do have to be industrious, but to what end? And
yeah,
so I jokingly, I say all the time, I've taken the joy out of calligraphy for myself. Like it's not like my for fun
mm,
thing. It's my side hustle and all that. And I'm good at it. I like having it as a second business and everything. But it's not my like, I'm gonna do it for fun thing anymore. Which is why
yeah.
I'm like looking for the things like, you know,
Looking for
knitting, like
another, yeah, another medium to try, yeah,
yeah, making silly, useless things.
that are really cool.
I
Stop.
hope.
So, I would another question I wanted to ask, in terms of your creative process, what is the most enjoyable?
I think that my favorite parts are the risk and the trial. Like, if I think back to the first kind of clothes that we would make were reconstructions. I think it's like a big thing now to do like thrift reconstructions and stuff like that and take like big
I
band
enjoy
t-shirts
seeing
and
that too.
yeah, like so that's what I used to do like back in 2001, 22 years ago.
It's
And
okay. I'm right with you. A lot of people are younger than us, but you know what? I was like, yes, I know I got my group of people that
that's it.
understand, and I understand you, and I know timelines like the back of my hand.
Back 20 years ago. I think it was like, I don't know, it's the thrill of it. Like I was just happy to like barely even like chalk outline anything and just like cut. And I know like I'm a big like measure twice, cut once, but like the thrill of the cut and the getting everything in place and the risk of like not having or having the perfect amount of materials and everything, the risk was my favorite because I think the risk of error puts you into places where you end up trying new processes.
Yeah.
You end up like putting in like new mixes of fabrics. You end up like trying out paneling and stuff.
Yeah.
The risk of error of knitting is like, well, I guess I'm going to have to like undo the stitches and then very carefully like find where the needles have to go back into to redo it, right? And in like every mistake you can make, there's something to be learned about the process or what you can do either to fix it or to say like, I just like wasted something, where often the risk is low enough. Like, I mean, when we talk about paper wise, I mean, we waste a few sheets of paper and a bit of ink when you're making mistakes, but like the stakes being like a bit more material, having to invest in a few other things. Like I love the risk factor because I think that's where truly creative things start to happen because you might have had an original plan and the end result might not be what it looks like, what you thought exactly it was going to look like.
Yeah.
In getting there, you also have to like, I feel like psychologically sometimes I have to like talk myself down and be like, okay, it's going to be okay. And the thrill of that is like, that's my adrenaline.
I love that point. And I said that a few times, like it never ends the way you start. And then I feel like it parallels because you know I'm deep. You know we get deep around here. Um so I always feel like, well, especially when I try new things, like the risk, the trial and error, the talking yourself through those moments, like a lot of that too for me is discovering things about myself or like, all right, like for instance, this podcast has been, you know, a little difficult for me because I'm learning now. When I started, I was like shrinking myself in terms of like my voice and, you know, expressing myself, saying how I feel, wanting to make sure people were comfortable, you know. So I would filter myself or I wouldn't say anything at all. So to have a podcast and like bright idea, Mel, you know, and I know it's something God called me to do, but I was like, all right, let me get, you know, I'm gonna be a G about it. I'm gonna get it done. And I discovered so much about myself through this process. And it's definitely not what I thought it would be when I started, but it's way better than I imagined, right? And not even just for the podcast, but for myself. I feel like lighter, you know, and not so like prone to say things to make sure I don't either upset anyone or offend anyone or make anyone uncomfortable. But that's not even how I'm wired to do those things, right? So if I say something, like it's not out of malice or so if I
There's
disagree
so
or
much
if I have a different
vulnerability.
point of view, yeah, a different point of view, like say that and it's okay. Like you can disagree or you know what I'm saying? So yeah, the process is a beast, but that's the adrenaline. That's the like I know this shit is gonna suck at a point, but I'm gonna come out of it better. So that's how I feel about like if I'm doing a piece or a collection or if I'm trying to like bring an idea to paper and it's hard and it's not translating, like knowing when to step back and knowing when to like power through or, you know,
There's so much
so
like
much.
self-awareness,
Yeah,
like
so much.
self-awareness and like a lot of self-talk is involved in creating too because
Very true.
like every stage that you're going through like you have to be the one that's like confident enough to be like okay like I've done the right thing, like I can do the next thing.
Yeah.
And that self-talk is what gets you to the next thing or the I mean it's really easy to ditch a project too.
Yep.
to be like,
Nobody
I didn't
over
share it
our
with
shoulder,
anybody.
like, hey, did you finish that deadline? I mean, unless you work with a client, you got to fulfill your deadlines and your
Yeah.
deliverables. But when it's just you, like you have to be, the one that nudges you, and you got to be the one to light the fire under you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. It's like, it's the willingness to put out something that's like imperfect or doesn't match like the exact vision that you had at the start.
Mhm.
Like it takes a lot of like vulnerability, understanding of like how it's going to be perceived, like talking your own self through all of it and being like, sometimes it's okay to make something like imperfect
Mhm.
or weird.
Right. Or unusual, not like it's been seen before,
Yeah.
and being
And
okay
that's
with that,
the
right?
vulnerability of that is like, I think people who stop themselves from creating are often like afraid to be seen. And like
True.
being seen as being judged or being even like a little bit outside of what people thought you were.
Right.
Like,
And when we change too, like
yeah,
we change and we grow and we like want to try something new, right? And being afraid of how people will receive that. Yeah.
yeah. I think I've talked to so many artists
Mhm.
before who are just kind of like, the more of their creative selves they put out there, the more their work they put out there, they feel like people that they've known in the past or who are friends with them like push themselves further from them too. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it's the act of putting out anything that you've created is extremely vulnerable, or it feels very exposing, even if it's like the closest people to you. I'm sure that you feel like this sometimes. It's like, even with like at home with Kevin, I'm sure you're just like, sometimes you're like, don't look yet until it's done.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like, I'm not ready for people to see it yet.
No. Or tell him my idea. And he's like, I don't understand. And I'm just like, what? You understand me?
Like, it's so clear,
Yeah.
obviously.
And he would like, even too with this project, he was like, babe, you just gonna have to show us what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah,
we don't see what you see. And I think that's a big thing
that's
we
good advice.
yeah, that's a big, yeah, that was huge. I mean, I keep thinking about it. Like when people tell me they don't understand something, just being misunderstood was one of my biggest, like, oh no, they don't understand. But he was just like, we don't see it the way you see it. Show us what you see. Like it's different.
Yeah,
And he was like, that's more of a reason for you to follow through with it. And
yeah.
yeah, that was, one of my meltdowns. The biggest damn meltdown that day. I said, no one understands my idea. And he was like, it's okay. He was like, just follow through. Show us what you're talking about. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Um,
Yeah,
and it just
it's
takes a lot of
easier to
courage to
show than
follow
tell.
through. Huh?
Easier to show than tell.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then I realized too that I don't have to tell my ideas. Sometimes it's premature,
I 100%
And
know.
huh?
I 100% know. Like sometimes you're like, oh, it's too weird to tell people that like I'm specifically doing this.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't think you can, or you're kind of like doing too much right now, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you're
And
like,
then,
yeah,
yeah,
I can get there.
I know. Um, you have to go back to work?
No, not
No.
right now.
Okay, let me know because this is so good. No, let me tell you this, and I'm gonna keep this on episode 2. I don't give a damn. So let me tell you this. You know how on TikTok I see a lot about planning your meetings and work and life around your cycle. So last week I was like, yeah, boom, 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 calendar invites sent,
Yes.
booked. And then this week I was like, oh my God, this was not the week for it.
Mm, yes.
But this is like, I feel like everything is falling into place because the conversation I had yesterday and like having this conversation with you, which is like why I'm like, yay, I get to just talk to my friends because
Yeah.
it's not like I have to, not put on, but in a way, like if I don't know a person well, like you do have to show up, and
Yeah.
hosting and leading the conversation, which I'm just like, oh, thank God, because I'm just weird.
I can fully relate. I don't know what part of your cycle you're in, but for me, like leading up to like period week, I'm like
Mhm.
feeling the hormones, like I'm feeling more emotional and like down, and my energy's low and everything.
Mhm.
And I totally talk to other artists about this too. It's like how can we make our artistic, creative, and business lives like match this like the level of energy that we have, because it's like sometimes it feels like an impossibility to get out there and be social and do all of these
Yeah.
things.
I think we have to, though. I mean, it's going to get to a point where, like, I'm realizing, no, it's something that I will be implementing. And like my life will work around my cycle, because when I am on 10, I
Yeah.
want to be in the spaces that I need to be in. And when
Yeah.
I'm not, I want to rest. Like, you know what I'm saying? So this is my period week. And
Yeah.
where am I? Day 4. So I'm approaching the 10 mode. I'm
Mm-hmm.
approaching like the, yeah, let's do it, let's do it. And surprisingly, last week I was expecting to be like up and down and hormonal and things like that or whatever, but
Yeah.
I was so good. And it just, I guess it
Thank
depends
you.
on too, because I know there's like the seed cycling. And I
Yeah.
know last week I really did take time out to like, make sure I work out, make sure I'm eating good and all the things. But listen, it's happening. I don't think it's something that I can like, glaze over. Nah, no
I wish you
meetings.
could, I wish you could logic yourself out of it,
You-
but there's like no way.
There's no way. Hormones are like, they are a beast. And
There's no way. Yeah.
there's no way around it. Like I told my husband, I said, I love you. But I was in a lethargic, like, I was just like, whatever. Eat a
Yeah.
Pop-Tart, eat Belvita crackers. I'm not making my
Yeah.
breakfast this morning.
Yeah.
And he was like, you good? I was like, yeah, I love y'all. I'm in the phase right now. So bear with me. And he understands.
No energy for
Yes. But
any of that.
no, this
Yeah.
has been like, I'm grateful that I can have these conversations and be in chill mode for sure. So
I'm glad, because it's like energy giving for you.
yeah, I know. Yeah, but I'm good. I love it. So,
You are good.
what was I going to say? Yeah, we had such good conversation so far. And I feel like we touched
Yeah.
everything like immediately. Boom. And started talking about all
We
the
got
things
this.
that I
We
knew
got this.
that
Yeah.
that we would discuss.
Like
So
we
we
always do.
got huh?
Like we always do.
Yeah, we got right into it. So, I will say this though, following your journey, and I too want to talk about your rebrand and how choosing your colors, like it came out so beautifully, and your photos, everything came out so well, and I love it. How was that process for you? I know it's a different type of creative process, but in some way you had to like make these decisions and really tap into you to see what you liked. I loved how you were like, I'm trying to figure out what it is that like who I am right now, and how that would translate to, the work that
Mhm.
I'm doing, my brand, all of that, the language, the tone. So share some of that. I wanted you to
Yeah.
talk about it because I thought it was such a great process to watch you like navigate.
Yes. Thank you
Yeah.
for being part of it. I was like running everything by you at all times.
It was
Um,
so
it was really fun. So like being a director of marketing, like I know what the process already looks like.
mm,
I know how to exercise that process. I have done it for clients, and it's like an act of really having to like hold a mirror up to someone and say like, this is what you're looking like right now. What do you want to look like in the future, and who is it that you want to attract, right? So
yeah.
there's a lot of like very deep questions that you have to answer. The really interesting thing about like doing it for myself was like I was like, oh my god, I don't know. Like you're suddenly like, when someone says like, can I reflect yourself back to you, you're like, I don't know who I am or like what
Yes.
I'll have to be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
um so I am the one that like talked to you about like when you had like mauve paper co and you're like, should I be like Melarie Lucy? I was like, yes, 100%. And then when it was my turn, I was like, oh no, I can't do that.
He was like, hell yeah, you should do it. Like,
I
girl, you
know.
got me
But
all
then
the way together that day. You was like, you need to do it. This is amazing.
that's why I was like, am I a hypocrite? And then you know
No,
what?
you're
We started
not.
to talk through
It
it.
was different
We
for
started
you.
to talk through it. And then I was like, okay, wait, I've got my career, my day job career as well. And
Mhm.
that's where I'm known as like Sylvia Wong, Sylvia Jane Wong. Like, and I was like, okay, I've got like that part of me, and like via calligraphy is kind of like the art part of things. So we kept that things like in that direction. And I think that the depth of it all, like reflecting back to what we were just talking about earlier, like form versus content in art.
Mhm.
everyone looks at the form of a brand, which is the logo that you have, the colors that you choose, and they forget the content part of it, which is like, to me, again, is the most important part of like art, the basis of a brand. Like when you're creating something, like why were you doing it? Like what was this fulfilling the need for? Like what were the values that were in that place, or like what are you trying to express, right? So the exercise that we went through was like entirely, and we started looking at words like, community, inclusivity, connection, and try to determine like what all of my different demographics were. And there were like uniquely, one demographic of all of my brand PR clients and the ones that are trying to help their brands make a connection with their clients. So, acting as a medium of like making that connection and doing like an in-person art event. And then there was a whole other demographic of like the people locally that want to learn from me.
Right.
And it's something I really missed during like COVID lockdowns. Like here in Ontario, we went through the longest lockdowns in the world. Like just length of time, like how long we weren't able to really gather. Like I still find it almost like hard to figure out like how to meet with people in person. Like how do you invite people? Like how do you like be like, let's make plans? Like I don't remember,
Yeah, and then when you get in the setting, you're like, okay, so this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you handshake yet? Are you hugging yet? Like, and it's just like, I think there's like this slight discomfort still, but like in talking about everything, I was like, a really important part of my brand and the thing that I really crave is like, on like Pinterest and TikTok, I just see these like dinner party girls all the time. And I'm like, that's it. Like, that's what I want. Like, I want like the vibe of like candles and a dinner party and hosting and like eating together and connecting. Like, and hard to describe that like vibe in general, but I was like, that's like what I want things to like kind of feel like. Not that I'm like an event planner, but that's like what I want like the overall kind of connection and vibe to be. So we talked a lot about like intimacy, community, and those as like values of like what I want my brand to always represent and always to be about. And understanding that was like, it makes it that much easier to then say, okay, here's what your logo looks like. Does that represent all of the things that we discussed, including like the general feel of like a little bit more luxurious, a little less like, crafty, like some of the more like crafty calligraphers that are out there, right? And I don't know, process wise, like I think I ran many things by you where I was like, is this me? Does this look like me? And you're like, yeah, of course it does. And I was like, okay, just checking. Like, I don't know. And there's, I wouldn't call it like discomfort to it, but there's just like almost like the doubt of like moving forward. But the way that, I worked with Stacey Tang Designs and she did like the whole brand process and web process all together. She really did it like step by step, guiding me through like, you just got to approve this part so far, and then we can talk about feedback, then just this part. And it felt very correct in the order.
It was
and
so
very
digestible too. Like to me, like to take those doses at a time.
yeah,
These are big decisions at the end of the day.
it was big decisions. And she
So
was very smart about like certain parts of it. She had like a matrix of here's your competitors. Like you said, like what's important is like, local competition, global competition, depending on like who you're trying to attract and what they're searching for. And she presented all those options to say like, here's what everyone's currently doing. Like, do you want to do it different? Because that was initially what I said. I want to stand out, right?
yeah.
So highly recommend, like if anyone out there is like thinking about the rebrand process, on one hand, I've always said about like creatives and artists and makers and everything, I'm like, please don't get stuck on trying to figure out the name of your brand and trying to make your logo before you put anything in the world.
Yeah.
Tons of people that like come to my beginner workshop, they're like, how do you know you're ready to put things out there? I'm like, what do you mean, how do you know you're ready? Like, just put things out in the world. And they're like, how do you know you're ready for someone to buy something? How do you know you're ready to sell something? How do you know you're ready for this? And there's always a question of like, how do you know you're ready? And I'm like, it's such a hard question for another person to answer.
Yeah.
No one can answer that for you, but it's always the question. It's like, so how much practice should I do until I know I'm ready? I'm like, ready for what? Like, for someone's approval, for someone to say like, you've become qualified. There's no like diploma for creating things, right?
Right.
And
And
then you
you
don't have to be
define what it is for you.
certified.
Yeah. Like, I think taking that ownership, it does take courage though too, to say,
Mhm.
like, I'm an artist, I'm a painter, I'm a creative. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And waiting for someone to validate what you have to put out in the world or what you do, it's easier because if you decide, then it's on you. You have to take accountability and responsibility for whatever that
Yeah.
is.
The
And
whole, like, there's nothing stopping anyone,
I
right?
know
Like,
it's
that's the whole
not
thing. There's, like,
though.
there's nothing stopping anyone. You know, me and you, we talked about, like, tattoo gate, but there was, like, cake gate before that. There's this girl selling these cakes that were, like, just, like, there was just sprinkles on them, and the lettering she did on top was it was, like, terrible, but people were like, "Okay, first of all, she sold it for, like, $80. Second of all, she has a whole shop where everyone is giving her $80 all the time for these terrible cakes, but everyone's been paying for them. They got
Yeah,
what they asked for. That's what they expected. It's only because she had this bad customer, I don't know, big mess that they had between each other around like posting on Facebook and stuff like that, that she really got exposed for not having great quality cakes. But there is nothing stopping her from selling or
yeah.
having a store or making cakes.
Especially if there are people buying it.
That's all the validation she needs. Just like people are paying for it. So like what do I have to prove to anyone else,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But now like the judge and jury is the whole internet and the whole world.
Yes, it is.
And
Oh
if
God.
she's canceled, whatever. But like I mean, everyone has the ability and the
Yeah.
permission to just
Yeah, you
make.
really do have to do that for yourself because I was saying this other day, like no one has the power to give or take anything like from you or to say who you are or you know what I'm saying, to stop you from doing anything. Like people can
Mhm.
say things, people can try to hold you up, people can tell you no, but they don't have the power to stop you from continuing to pursue that thing or be that person or you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
You have to be the one like to give permission to yourself
yeah,
to go in whatever direction you want to. Like
exactly.
you're 100% allowed to pivot everything you do. And I think you've gone from lettering to illustration. If you one day were like, I am going to be doing pottery, who's to stop you
Who's
from
to stop
doing
me
it?
from doing that? Right. And you know, for so long I was afraid to do that. I was afraid to change anything up that I was doing in like fear that people would be turned off and not like it.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, like I'm doing myself and everyone a disservice by not following through with what I want to do because then in that space I will thrive. In that space, someone will see it. It will resonate. It will impact somebody or encourage or inspire them. And that's with everything. That's just being, right? Just
Yeah.
being your true authentic self and like, you know, not shrinking yourself or like in my instance, you know, using your voice, even, you know, you find some bumps in the road. Somebody's not gonna like it and that's cool. It's not for everybody, but you know, that's doing myself and everyone else around me a disservice when I'm just not showing up
Yeah.
100% as myself. And I think creatively we really have to take note of that. Like if I do get into air dry clay or pottery and then you see me start posting, you're like, oh yeah, she got into it. If it turns
Finally did
into
it.
something great. And I will make sure and then another thing too is making sure it's sustainable for me. Like you
Yeah.
have
It
to
also
know
doesn't
what's
have to turn
sustainable
into
for you.
anything.
Yeah, and it doesn't.
You don't have to turn it into anything. Like
Right.
anyone's expectation of that is like, do you have to sell a certain number of them? Like, do you have to make a certain number of
Yeah,
dishes? Like,
right.
there's no minimum there. Maybe you want to just like use up the rest of your clay and get rid of it. You know, like
Yeah,
it's
that's true
just like,
too.
there's no rules set for yourself in like your creative endeavors. And I told you this before, but it was more of a recent thing where you're like, I'm just going to share more of my life. And you did this like on all your channels where you said like, I'm just going to share more of my kids, my joy, my travels, my
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
And I think all the time there are people that are also asking for permission to say like, hey, should I have a separate like social account that's for when I want to share my food, when I want to share my personal life, when I want to share my art life. And they segment themselves into these digestible pieces where it's harder for them to maintain on all these channels.
Yeah, that's hard.
And
That's why I don't have two. I was like, I just can't manage two. Oh
I just
gosh.
ditched my personal one because I'm like, this is too much work to even like look at two of them, right?
Yeah.
So like to have to divide yourself in all these pieces is like, it's not humane to yourself.
Yeah, and I think
Like
too, like what I'm creating is from me. So like my
it's also the assumption of
experiences.
people not being interested in you as a whole person is like that in itself is hurtful. Like I think the way that
Mhm.
social is formatted,
Yeah,
I've said algorithm more than once in this call,
it's
like
okay.
real there are real life implications to when algorithms are delivering the type of content they think that people want to see.
Mhm.
And the consequences are that, you know, the performance of some of your content is going to be way better than others because it's what people followed you for in the first place and what they
Mhm.
think that you are.
Yeah.
And so I think TikTok is particularly powerful at this. And like a lot of creators have talked about, like, if I don't do this exact format of joke, of formatted, like, you know, get ready with me or type
Yeah.
of makeup review or whatever,
Yeah.
people are like, who is this? Unfollow, right? That in itself is like dehumanizing to the person who's just trying to create, to like have a creative outlet, talk about every aspect of their life. And you're there saying, like, I only want to see this from you.
Yeah.
It's like
And that's not
always
fair.
further perpetuated.
Yeah, I don't think it's
It's
fair
not
to
fair.
like for us to do to ourselves, right? And for others to just be like, oh, like nitpicking, I want this part of you. Cause I feel like the reason it was I'm a creative being. Like I'm all these things, and not just out here drawing and doing all the things like I'm a
Yeah.
wife, I'm somebody's mom, I
Yeah.
have a family, I'm from here, this is what I like to do. Cause I feel like from the beginning, from when I started Mo Paper Co, that started from an experience of like, oh my God, I need to tap back into my creativity. And then I started to create for everyone else and,
Yeah.
share it and things like that. But it came from an experience. And me like coming back to myself. So everything from here on out from there to now has been some sort of experience, some pain point, joy, encounter,
Mhm.
conversation that is in my work, and it'll always be that way. And I think I was to the point where I'm more than just what you see here behind the lens or behind, social media and Instagram and all that. Like I'm a person too, and that contributes to my work. So it was important for me to do that.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, I can't keep dishing out work either. You're not about to get new art every day from me. It was so hard.
Look to our forever inspiration, Rihanna.
I know. Yes.
Just make music when she wants to make music. And
Yeah.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
all. Like if she wants to focus on something else, that's fine. And I think like that want for creativity in like other realms, it should be inspirational.
Yeah.
Like we've all only seen this pop artist and like now she's shown her strength in like fashion,
Many other things.
beauty, and
Yeah.
so many other things. And like we should all have that permission to create at our own pace, right?
I
It's not
just
this like
said this. I
album
just
every
said this
year.
yesterday. I was like, I am a Solange, Rihanna fan. Kendrick Lamar, like I love how
Yeah.
they duck
Yeah.
off. They live life. They do them, and then they come back with amazing work because they went back to their lives. Like,
Yeah.
where did we get this idea that you had to dish out work all the time, like every.
Capitalism.
Yes, very much that part.
But you know what? It was like the pop music of like when we were younger. I think like a lot of it was like very manufactured. It was like a lot of like Max Martin and like the Swedish, like the pop. They would just like write all these songs and like churn them out and stuff,
Mhm.
right? So it's like you could get an album every year from your faves back then. But that's not how art is made.
Yeah. I feel like we have to do some living before. I feel like too, take like I have to pour into myself. Like I know when I'm getting to my to the end of it. Like I know when I'm not taking care of myself by the level of creativity or how like freely it's flowing. Like I know. And that's when I realized, I was like, I love that Solange like did choreography for ballet, and
Yeah.
she had her concerts in the opera house. Like that is just so lit to me. And she does all these other things, and she does music, and that's how I discovered her. But I love that about her. I love and respect too, as a fan, that she's gonna go off and live her life, and then she's gonna come back with some fire music, and I'm gonna love it. So I was like, I'm like Kendrick Lamar, like he went ghost for a minute, like, and I was like, oh, you know what happened to K Dot? He came back, and it was fire. It's fire every time. But I feel like too, because they, hold space for living and experience in life to
Yeah.
contribute to the work that they put out. Why can't we do that for, capitalism? Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But it's just like, give yourself permission to go off and live your life without this fear of people forgetting you. Because the people that's for you won't forget you. I was just talking to another artist. She said if they for you and they ride with you, they're not gonna forget you. Like
That's so
Beyonce
good.
will go off and live her life, and she come back, she still be like.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
Beyonce though, right? That's Solange, that's Kendrick Lamar. But it's just we are
There's
too.
also no shortage.
Right?
There's the people that are there for you, but there's no shortage of new people discovering you too.
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
true.
like when you see the numbers drop after a break or whatever, you're like, oh my God. But like, I almost forget all the time that like there's new people to be introduced to. There's
Yeah.
new people to tell your story to.
Yeah.
And the people that are discovering you at this step of your journey still need that introduction post. They still need that like basis of who you are and what you're doing right now. And everyone else needs that reminder all the time too, right? Like
Because you're not the same person you were yesterday, even. Like you have the
and
power.
you didn't reach everyone in the world yet.
Yeah.
Like
There's billions of people like in the world. So it's like, yeah, you haven't, like, not everyone has like have met you. So
yeah.
yeah, that's so
I think
true.
I am meeting like even in-person workshops and locally and stuff, like a whole new generation of like younger people like
Mm-hmm.
that are looking to learn. Cause I felt like I really had it in my mind. I was like, I appeal to like the millennial woman, works in an office 9 to 5, is like up and around downtown all the time. And it's like, coming out of this pandemic, most people are working from home. It's like
Yeah.
a lot younger people coming to my workshops now. So it's like more like Gen Z. And it's just like, there's always new people out there. And I think we have to have like less of this mindset around scarcity and feeling like,
Yeah.
there's not enough people.
Yeah.
Because my day job, like my CEO always says, like, to any of our clients who are feeling like we don't have enough followers or we don't have enough people like seeing our posts. And he's like, okay, so 100 people like your post. If you had 100 people physically like in your store right now, would you consider that a success?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know it's not apples to apples in that, like, it's like people that passively liked it and everything, but it's like, don't take these things so for granted that you're looking at these, millions of views and likes on these viral posts and thinking that comparably you have to get that for your small business. It's
Right.
just not the same.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same as like a kid falling over a viral video, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
like, what value is that, or what sticking value is that millions of people liked it? It's just an easy thing to like or share.
Perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I too think like whoever sees it is for them to see it. It's for those people to see. And that's what matters.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we do get caught up in the numbers.
I know. And whatever at all of that. I don't want to get into that part of the conversation.
No, I don't want to either. So
no, thank you.
we're gonna jump over that. I have been ending my podcast with this question, and I love it. It's my favorite. I would even say, like, what would you say to a Sylvia that used to be excited to chalk out patterns to make clothing or reconstruct, or, the moment you pulled out that brush pen or the pointed nib? What would you tell her with everything you've learned and experienced up to this point? What would you tell her to encourage or nudge or inspire
Oh my
her?
God. This is like therapy inner child work stuff, Mel.
I'm sorry.
You
Know that I'm not surface.
This is making me look cry
You said it earlier. You said it. We're talking about the creative process, and I was like, oh, That's my...
Yes. You know what? I would say to my younger creative self, just keep making things. And that's all.
Yeah.
I'm like getting emotional trying to say. I think it's just keep making things. Like, frankly, I need that reminder for myself right now too.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
It's that whatever it is that I have going on, finding the time to just make something is my happiness, my peace, my time to just like be creative. And that's all. That's my advice to my younger self and all those younger selves out there.
I know. Yes, that's a good word. I was just like, oh yeah, that's exactly what you want to do now. Just keep making things. I
Yeah.
find that
I gotta
everyone...
think about that next project right now.
I know, right? Everyone I've asked that question, like everyone, they're like, oh, that's something that I'm learning now. I feel like a lot of us are in this space where we're like trying to figure out what it looks for us, like not like what someone else is telling us to do. Especially being in business for so long too, or doing, calligraphy or art for, a number of years, like where we are now. I feel like a lot of us are in a season of like transition and like a pivoting, or like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to try something new. And to be a beginner again, like to be new to something again, it brings up like that feeling when you first started to, started this new craft.
Yeah.
And we just have to remember those things over and over again. It's never, which is cool. Like we never arrive. We don't have it all together. We're always learning. So it's kind of like a cycle. And I feel like every time it's going to be easier for us to follow through or to get started or to do something new and something scary.
Yeah.
So
I know. I think it's that feeling of trying something new. And I think if I can add something to that statement I just said,
mhm,
keep making things, but make things for number one, yourself.
yeah,
So like not for selling, not for profiting, not even for posting or sharing.
yeah,
Number two, make things for no reason.
yeah,
Like just like do like no reason ones, like start a cross stitch or puzzle or whatever it is. Like do it for no reason. Don't do it for the purposes of sharing. Like just make
just do it.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And I can see how it would be kind of hard now, especially with social media, especially like for younger people, like with social media being like here when they got here, or when they got
Yeah.
the knowledge of it, it was like boom, like not having to post or capture those moments to share it, just doing it for yourself. That's a rebellious act now to me. To
It
say
is.
this is for me and I'm not posting it is a rebellious act.
Right.
So,
Because who's to know if you did anything at all if you don't share it, right?
and it's okay if they knew or not. It doesn't make it any less valuable. So,
Mm-hmm.
yep. As always, our conversations are lit. And
We really go off the deep end sometimes, but
we do.
I love
And
talking
so
to you.
what? Okay.
I love talking to you.
I love talking to you too. And what better than to have like really good conversations? The surface ones, they end quickly because I'm like, okay, like doo doo.
Yeah,
I just think it's a blessing to be able to be vulnerable and be honest and transparent with the people in your life. I mean, that whole space for you to do that. So I think it's dope.
I love
Before
it.
we get off of this call though, I want people to know where to find you.
Yes, you can find me at viacalligraphy.com, or my Instagram handle is via calligraphy, VIA calligraphy.
Thank you for being here, Sil. I love you so much.
Thank you. Love you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that today's discussion sparked your creativity and inspired you to embrace your unique journey. Don't forget to share your thoughts, stories, and creations with me. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Leave a review, and let's continue to support and inspire one another on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep creating.